At this very moment, there is a creature in your home descended from a wolf. It has teeth designed for gripping, tearing, and crushing bone. Its digestive system is optimized for raw meat, and its instincts were forged over millions of years. It is, in every evolutionary sense, a predator, and you have given it a name, you have bought it a bed, you have taken hundreds of photos of it, sleeping in positions that would get any wild animal killed. You speak to it in a voice you do not use with adult humans. You spend 1% of your annual income on its food, healthcare, and entertainment. If it were to die tomorrow, you would grieve deeply and measurably. You would suffer with the same neurochemical profile as losing a human family member. This is, by any rational standard, completely insane. We took the top predator in our ancestral ecosystem and turned it into a creature that uses a puppy pad. How did a competitive, dangerous, large-bodied carnivore become the animal snoring on your sofa? The standard story, the one you probably heard as a child, goes like this. Humans domesticated wolves because wolves were useful. They helped us hunt and guarded our camps. In exchange, we fed them scraps and let them warm themselves by our fires. It was a practical, mutually beneficial arrangement that transformed the wolf into the dog. This story is logical, charming, and almost certainly wrong. The useful dog theory assumes Paleolithic humans thought they could capture a wolf and make it a tool. But this is not how domestication works, and it is not how those humans thought. Domestication is a slow, multi-generational process that requires feeding and tolerating an animal. A wild wolf is a dangerous, uncooperative animal that competed with humans for the same prey. Capturing wolf pups would have been an enormous investment of resources for a payoff that was entirely uncertain. More importantly, the archaeological timeline does not support the story. The earliest uncontested dog remains, a burial at Bonn-Oberkassel, dated to roughly 14,200 years ago, show something the utilitarian theory simply cannot explain this puppy. It was about 7 months old when it died, and it had been sick. Specifically, it suffered from canine distemper, a serious disease that requires care. The puppy had been ill for several weeks, yet it had been fed. It had been kept warm, and it had been cared for. After it died, it was buried curled up next to 2 humans, one of whom had even placed a hand on the puppy's head. Think about what that means for us 14,000 years ago. In a world without antibiotics, without medicine, without any practical reason, 2 humans spent weeks nursing a dying puppy. They fed it food that they could have eaten themselves. They spent time and energy that could have been used for survival. When the puppy finally died, they did not discard it. They buried it like family, which is not utility. This is not a working animal. This is a pet, in the most modern and emotionally loaded sense of that word. But the story goes deeper than the Bonn-Oberkassel site. In 2011, archaeologists in Jordan discovered the remains of a fox, buried with a human, dated to 16,500 years ago. The fox was interred with the same care and ritual attention, suggesting that emotional bonding was not exclusive to wolves and dogs. Humans were forming attachments to various species long ago, long before the dog lineage had fully diverged from its ancestors. And then there is the question of who really started it. The traditional narrative casts humans in the active role as masters, but a growing body of evidence suggests the reality is different. Wolves may have actually domesticated themselves. This is the commensal pathway hypothesis for our tired species. In the late Pleistocene, human groups became more sedentary. They began producing something that no animal had ever produced before. Garbage, middens of bones, and discarded food scraps accumulated near encampments. These waste piles were a buffet for any animal willing to get close. Some wolves, those with a lower flight distance and higher tolerance. They began to exploit this resource because survival is just that exhausting. These wolves were not being tamed. They were self-selecting. The individuals that could tolerate being near humans without panicking had access to more food. They had more offspring, and their offspring inherited their lower reactivity. Over generations, the population of wolves living on the human periphery became genetically distinct. They were less fearful, less aggressive, and more neotenic, meaning they retained juvenile traits into adulthood. Floppy ears, shorter snouts, spotted coats, all features we associate with dogs are side effects of this selection. The most famous demonstration comes from a Soviet experiment that has become legendary. In 1959, a geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev began an experiment on silver foxes at a fur farm. His protocol was simple in every generation: select the foxes that showed the lowest fear toward humans. Select for tameness. Nothing else. Within 10 generations, a blink of an eye in evolutionary time, the foxes had changed. They wagged their tails. They whined for attention. They licked their handlers' hands. Within 20 generations, their physical appearance had changed as well. Their ears flopped, their tails curled, and their coats developed white spotted patterns. Every single change that distinguishes a dog from a wolf appeared spontaneously as a side effect. Belyev's experiment proved that domestication can happen fast, and it produces a predictable set of changes. The fox experiment is, in many ways, a time-lapse replay of what happened 15,000 years ago. But Belyev's foxes revealed something even stranger, as they did not just become tamer, they became smarter, and in problem-solving tests, they outperformed their wild counterparts. They mastered following a pointed finger, reading human gaze direction, and interpreting vocal tone. These are skills specifically adapted to the cognitive niche of living alongside humans. The selection for tameness had inadvertently selected for a whole new kind of intelligence. It was the ability to read a human mind. This is the deepest truth of domestication. The dog does not just live in your house, but understands you. The dog understands you in ways that a wolf never truly can. Even a wolf raised from birth by humans cannot grasp those cues. Dogs follow human pointing gestures from 8 weeks of age. Wolves cannot, no matter how much training they receive. Dogs recognize human emotional expressions and respond to them appropriately. They experience a surge of oxytocin when they make eye contact. It is the same hormone surge that bonds human parents to their infants. The dog and the human have, in a literal sense, fallen in love. The mechanism of that love is written into their very brains. But the most radical implication of this research is not about dogs. It is about us, the humans. If domestication is a two-way process, what does it say about us? We are the species to which so many others have chosen to attach. Dogs, cats, sheep, goats, cattle, horses, pigs, and chickens. An entire menagerie of species has moved closer to us. Humans are not just domesticators, we are a domestication attractor. Something about our social structure and our waste has proven irresistible. This flips the narrative entirely. We tell ourselves we tamed the wolf, but the wolf made the first move. We were the stationary resource, and they were the ones who approached. Nowhere is this self-domestication more obvious than with the cat. Felis catus was not domesticated by humans in any meaningful sense. It domesticated itself 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. Humans invented agriculture and began storing their grain. Stored grain attracted rodents, and rodents attracted small wildcats. Those wildcats found in human granaries a self-replenishing food source. Cats that tolerated proximity to humans got the most rodents. Those who got the most rodents had the most kittens. Over time, the population became genetically distinct from their wild relatives. They grew smaller, more juvenile, and more tolerant of human handling. But unlike dogs, cats never underwent the full domestication transformation. Their genome is still remarkably close to their wild ancestors. They retain the ability to survive and reproduce without human support. They are not pack animals. They do not look to humans for social cues. They are, in the words of one researcher, barely domesticated. They have chosen to live near us because it is convenient. They will continue to do so only as long as it remains convenient. This is not cynicism about cats. It is the key to understanding pet keeping. We did not bend these animals to our will. We created ecological niches, granaries, garbage dumps, warm fires, and the animals chose to occupy them. Our role was passive. We provided opportunity, and they provided the adaptation. The relationship was never about utility. It was about proximity, tolerance, and something that looks like love. So where does that leave us in the 21st century? Our relationship with pets has reached an intensity that would baffle our ancestors. In the United States alone, 70% of households now include a pet. The pet industry is worth over $100 billion annually. There are pet therapists, nutritionists, acupuncturists, and even pet psychics. There are dogs with Instagram accounts that have more followers than people. This is easy to mock, but it is also one of the most remarkable facts. We are the only animal on Earth that forms deep, enduring emotional bonds. We allocate significant resources to the care of creatures not related to us. They are not reproductively useful, nor even useful in any practical sense. We are the only species that will sit with a dying animal, hand on its head, simply because we do not want it to be alone. And here we must confront a possibility that is unsettling to our pride. We may not be the only species that does this. Researchers have documented cross-species adoption in the wild. A lioness nursing an antelope, monkeys caring for a marmoset, a dog nursing kittens. These cases are rare and usually dismissed as hormonal misfirings. But they may be clues to an evolutionary substrate for cross-species empathy. Humans have simply amplified this far beyond anything else in the kingdom. We are not unique in our capacity to care for the other. We are unique in the scale and intensity with which we exercise it. Is that sentimentality? Yes. Is it a cognitive error, an overextension of the parental care instinct? Perhaps. But it is also something more. It is evidence that the human capacity for empathy is not limited to our own kind. The same neural circuitry that fires for a human baby fires for a puppy. The same oxytocin cascade that bonds a mother to her child bonds us to our dog. These are not separate systems. They are the same system applied across boundaries. Boundaries that evolution never expected us to cross, but we cross every day. The Bonn-Oberkassel puppy was not a working animal, nor was the Jordanian fox. They were, in all probability, something far simpler and far more human. They were friends. That friendship stretched across species is one of the quiet wonders of our existence. We took the apex predator and asked it generation by generation to trust us, and it said yes. So next time you find your dog waiting at the door with disproportionate joy, consider what that wagging tail actually represents. It represents 14,000 years of mutual approach. It represents a decision made in the Pleistocene to move closer to the fire. It represents a genetic cascade triggered by tolerance that reshaped the skull, softening the bark into something that sounds to the human ear like a greeting. The wolf chose this, and so did we. Here we are, two species that should have been enemies, sharing a sofa, sharing a life, and the strange comfort of proximity to a creature who will never understand your words, but understands exactly when you need them to rest their head on your knee and let out a sigh that says, "I am here." That is not utility. That is not instinct. That is, by any definition that matters, love. And it began with a piece of meat tossed from a fire to a shadow waiting in the dark.